The RCMP Heritage Centre is a not-for-profit charitable organisation mandated to share the story of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. This is one of those stories, part of your heritage.
I got interested in the RCMP through a friend of mine's dad. And it wasn't my original career choice coming out of school. But as I finished high school, and like everybody else, had a group of friends, and all of a sudden, her father, who, was the picture-perfect Mountie. He'd come home from work, and I'd be in the house, and he'd hang up his uniform, and his hat would be in the closet, and all of a sudden I got really interested in what the force represented. And he would talk to me about depot. And everyone talked about depot as a member as something really unique, something very special, and it's something that everybody did. And that piqued my interest. And then eventually, like everybody else, I went through the recruiting process and applied. And I got accepted. And then, my career took a little bit of a different twist, because being from Newfoundland, not being a unilingual province, I was given a very unique opportunity. And the summer before, I worked as a summer student. It was one of those, I was going to university, and they had this program called Supernumerary Special Constable. So it's a summer student essentially. And so I worked in uniform at St. John's Detachment along with a lot of the members. And then they asked me, I had my date to go to depot. But I had a choice. I could go to Montreal for 6 months on French language training and start depot 6 months later in a unilingual French troop, or I could go to depot immediately. And I thought about it. I spoke to a lot of people, and I took the French route. I actually went to Montreal on language training, and then arrived at depot on a cold March morning, and like everybody else, walked in through the gates of this place, and overwhelming, to say the least. What else was interesting in my particular world is, growing up, I played a lot of hockey, and when I was on language training, I played for the C Division hockey team, and I actually ended up arriving at depot late. My troop were here. They arrived. I was one of the last ones to arrive because I was playing in a hockey tournament that weekend. That wouldn't happen today. It happened then, and which was kind of interesting in itself. And I'm a goalie, and they needed a goalie to play in that tournament. And so it was kind of, I arrived here late and walked in through the gate on Dudney Avenue and saw this place. But the place had a feeling to it. And at that particular time, it was in 80, 81. My regimental number was 36299. So that alone signifies the fact that 36,000 had gone before me. And today, the cadets that are graduating are at 60,000 plus. Matter of fact, the Minister Taves was out here when Cadet 60,000 went through. So, and a recruit at that time was different than today's world of a cadet. A recruit, you were a member, you were sworn in as a member, you had your regimental number. And and I had, ironically enough, I had 6 months service, because my language training counted as service before I even came to depot. And, it was interesting, being from Newfoundland, speaking with my French teacher in high school, and telling him that I was going on French language training. He's like, this can't be. Like, you couldn't count to 10, and I couldn't. But it was an opportunity, and ironically enough, that was probably one of the best decisions I made in the Mounted Police, because that for me opened up so many doors. I came through training. I was in a unilingual French troop, as I said. Half my troop were first official language French, the other half were English. My pit partner, Bertillon, So if you know, I can picture walking to B block and all the beds are lined up. And you had Berthiaume, Brown, Chauvin, Casey, Dufour, as we went through the troop. And it was interesting because Berthiaume, being from Quebec, we became, and still are, good friends. He's still in the force today. And that started off the bond. And oftentimes in today's world, when I speak to cadets, I talk about, you know, you arrive at depot virtually as strangers. And through a 6-month process, you become friends, but then you become part of a big family. It's a family across Canada. It's a family of vets that have gone before you, family of existing members, an extended family of our support mechanisms, our spouses, our kids that support us all going the way through. But that decision, I guess, is one that, for me, made all the difference, because after language training and after doing my depot training in a unilingual French troop, I ended up, my first posting was in the province of Quebec, a place called Rivière-du-Loup. 15,000 unilingual French people, plus 2, my wife and I. And again, you know, it's not that it only allowed me to learn the language, but it also allowed me to learn the culture in Quebec and really solidify my language and the understanding of where the RCMP fit in different provinces of Canada and so on. From there, I went back to Newfoundland, the police in my home province on the south coast of Newfoundland and also in Gander. And the majority of my work was basically in plain clothes in Quebec and drug investigations and the like. And I did 3 years in uniform in B Division. And again, because of the fact that at that point in time I was fully bilingual, there were all kinds of opportunities that started to crop up. And one of the opportunities that came up was to come back to depot as an instructor. And that's why I highlight that particular part of the story. And I remember a conversation I had with the commanding officer in B Division at that time. His name was Larry Warren. And Larry Warren, you know, most members referred to him as Bucky Warren. Now at the time I was a young constable, I would never call him that, but just a great guy. I worked a lot with him in B Division, and this opportunity of coming to depot came up. And I went to speak to him about it. And he was an instructor at depot years ago, and I wasn't aware of all those pieces at the time. And there was a couple of things that struck me. First of all, he was a commanding officer of the division who would take the time to talk to a drug investigator, constable in a division about, you know, careers and so on. But what he said to me was, it is so true in today's world. He said, if you have an opportunity to go to depot, jump at it, because it's a lifetime experience, it's a one-time opportunity, and don't let it slip by. He said, you will always get the opportunity to go back to drug section, to go back to uniform policing, to run your own attachment, to do whatever you want within the force. But the opportunity to go to depot comes and goes. Don't lose that opportunity. So I talked to Deb, and my boys were young at the time, and it was a good opportunity for us as a family to get grounded, to get into you know, sort of a normal lifestyle of days and so on. But that wasn't what really piqued it for me. Was the opportunity to make a difference, an opportunity to be in the corporal's position that I saw my corporals when I was in training. And you know, that's a period of time that for me is really, really vivid in my memory. Like I remember, you know, one of the instructors, Corporal Boucher, Harper Boucher, and you know, he was one of my instructors when I went through training. When I came back as an instructor, he was an officer, and he went on to be the commanding officer. I look at my drill instructor, and everybody remembers their drill instructor for a lot of reasons. And my drill instructor was a guy by the name of Jean Lucier. And today, he works here at depot in the driver training unit, you know, some 31 years later. And I can remember all of my instructors, in actual fact. I can remember my law instructor and operational training, and it was a it was a time in my life, I guess, where you realize the impact that they had on you. And now it's a matter of flipping it over and say, wow, I could be in the same position and give back. And so I did. We took the opportunity to come to Regina and bought a house here like everybody else, and I started teaching here. And I started getting involved in depot from a lot of different perspectives. One was, there was a change in policing across Canada. There was a need for depot to change the teaching methodology to be more relevant with respect to the needs. And that's when I became heavily involved with some other instructors and some civilian members from headquarters. One lady by the name of from 𝐻𝑒𝑟𝑖𝑡𝑒, who was a phenomenal lady and very much ahead of her time with respect to training and how it should be done. Because policing is not an academic job. Policing is very much a hands-on job. Policing requires you to make very quick decisions, not always having all the facts, and being able to do a risk assessment as you go through. But the training needed to provide cadets with an environment that was safe. An environment, if you will, that allowed them to make mistakes and learn from them, but do things in a hands-on. And I remember back in training, we used to do scenarios, but we'd be in a room and you'd have a pretend radio and you would go through the pretend codes and you would pretend to be driving to a scene or whatever, and eventually you would go to a scene and then do a very simple type of scenario. But look at today. You've got a full operational detachment here at the training academy, Buffalo Detachment, operational police cars. The detachment has a bay where you would drive a car in, and like any detachment across Canada, with prisoners and searches and cells and cameras and interview rooms and court. So in actual fact, the cadets have today they have a hands-on approach to training, and that started in the mid-90s when I was here as an instructor. And Dr. 𝐻𝑒𝑟𝑖𝑡𝑒 was one of the ones that drove that. And I really believed in that type of training at the time. And but back to the original question about the impact and so on. The first troop that I taught here was Troop 15, and they came to depot about a month ago for their 20-year reunion. And so I had the opportunity at that point to go back 20 years when they were in training, looked at the photos, went through their training, and then I was able to present them with their 20-year medals, service medal in the force. And then it was, that to me was when all the lights started coming on, actually, because it was at that time I really saw what the CO of B Division, Larry Warren, was telling me at that time about the opportunity to make a difference, the opportunity to really see depot from a different perspective. So obviously I did that for 3 or 4 years and taught here and taught a number of troops, obviously, like all instructors, and made friends all across Canada in that time period, people that I still keep in touch today. Yesterday I got an email from one of the cadets who was retiring, ironically enough, with 20 years service, and decided to do something else in life. But the bulk of his email went right back to depot. He spoke about how the experience here at depot framed his career, framed his way of thinking, the way he deals with people, having an appreciation for the difference one can make in and out of uniform. A lot of times in the Mounted Police we focus on uniforms, the job they do in the community, but anyone that's worked across Canada in any job in the Mounted Police quickly realize that you have just as much of an impact in the community when you're playing hockey or in the schools with the kids or coaching hockey or doing all kinds of stuff. And it's that framing piece of depot. It's like where we all come in together and we learn together. Even the term member. You go anywhere across Canada, of the 60,000 people that have gone through here, and a question, are you a member? Or I'm a member. It automatically ties us all together in one way, shape, or form. And I don't think everybody understands that. I really don't. I think it's the experience of depot that brings you to that particular area. It comes back to the basic training with respect to not always the skill sets that we sometimes attribute to depot, like shooting and driving. Those are all important. Absolutely, all important. But I think the most important part of the training, or what depot really zeroes in on, is the piece about the softer side. You know, the being professional, caring, taking the time to listen, taking time to understand, trying to help people walk a mile in somebody else's shoes to understand the roles and responsibilities. And all those skill sets go right back to whether you're in charge of a unit, working on a unit, or just simply being part of the unit. And, you know, and I remember, you know, quite vividly getting, you know, a call from the deputy at the time and the commissioner talking about depot once again, like, would you like to go back to depot as the commanding officer? And I think if there's any, you know, when we sit back and reflect on our careers, and often I ask the cadets this. As a matter of fact, yesterday I did a CO inspection of the final troop that I will have here, Troop 3, who are graduating on Monday. And I said to them, you know, where do you see yourself in 10 years? Or where do you see yourself in 20 years within the career, within the Mounted Police? And I think if there was one particular job that I've always felt that I would like to have, it was the commanding officer of depot. I think it is such a unique place. It's such a special place. You know, Commissioner Zaccardelli always used to refer to depot as the jewel in the crown, the cradle of the force. If you go back to Commissioner Murray, you know, depot for them was always a very, very, very special place. So having the opportunity to come back as a CO was probably, in no doubt in my mind, you know, the highlight. And again, you know, Deb and I had very fond memories of our time here instructing. Not all fond memories of being here in training. You know, there were times that, like any cadet going through training, that you're pushed to areas where you didn't think you could do it, and you learn things about yourself. You learn that you can do it if your drive is there. And I tell the cadets again today, you know, I brought to depot as a young Newfoundland kid, 20 years old, when I walked through the doors here. I brought with me two things: a positive attitude and an impeccable work ethic. And if you take those two things, you can do it. And I'll never tell a cadet I was the smartest, because I wasn't. But I knew what I had to do to drive Roger to graduate, and I was going to. I knew what I needed to do to be a good instructor here for the cadets moving forward. So taking all that and coming here as a CO, what more could you ask for? It was, you know, in actual fact, I think if you look at it from this perspective, you know, you love your job, you never work a day in your life. And I can tell you, in 32 years in the Mounted Police, that's been the approach I've always had. And the job of CO is incredible. You know, when I think back over the 5 years that I've been here, I came here in June of '08, and I will leave in June this year. And within that 5 years, I think there's been, Susanna, I think I've graduated close to about 140 troops, and just under 4,000 cadets would have graduated under my watch, for a different way of looking at it. And when you think about that, it's a big responsibility. Because when I give a cadet a badge at the end of training, you're giving them their badge, but that badge signifies something. And that's me telling them, and when I look them in the eye for that brief period of time that we're together and we connect by me handing them their badge with their regimental number, and we connect by looking each other in the eye. And you know what I'm telling them is this: I have so much confidence in you after having completed the training here that I would work with you anywhere tomorrow. And that if you were going on a call to back up my son, who's a member in Newfoundland right now, I wouldn't worry, because I have that much confidence in you. And you know, within 2 weeks, I will be, you know, I'm moving to New Brunswick as a commanding officer in New Brunswick. And I will have the opportunity to work with and travel with cadets who have gone through training while I was here. Pretty special to have had the opportunity to affect the lives of others, to affect careers, to assist in, you know, hopefully assist in a lot of different ways. And you know, I think that's a really important piece, you know, to reflect on. The dog kennels, where the RCMP train all the police dogs, report to depot. And because of our probably unique relationship with the Royal family, and I think we've gifted 4 musical ride horses to the Royal family over time, and they gifted one of their dogs from their kennels to the RCMP. And the original intent was for the dog to become a service dog, a police service dog. But once you get to know her, you quickly realize that her disposition is one that's far more suited to a quieter role within the force than not that of a police dog. Years ago, if I go back to training, I wouldn't go near the houses where the officers live on base. That just didn't happen in the mid-'80s. Matter of fact, I don't think it happened in the mid-'90s. Now, I could be at home and the doorbell will ring and there'll be a cadet knock on the door and want to take the dog for a walk, and it's a way for them and I to connect and see how training is going and so on. So that's the story of the dog, probably one of the most photographed and gentle dogs that I've ever seen, and very unique story. We talk a lot, you know, about the RCMP in today's environment. Policing is not the same today as when I joined. Policing is very complex. The public expectations are very high. There is no such thing anymore as being off duty. You're on duty 24/7. Doesn't matter if you're in Surrey, BC, or St. Anthony, Newfoundland. You're on duty, and the public have high expectations. So if the expectations of the public are high, then the expectations of training has to be high. And you can't forget the history, the traditions of the force. You can't forget those who marched on the parade square before us. And you know, a lot of people don't understand all that until they come here. But once they come here and they march across the parade square, or they stop in front of the cenotaph and look at the names of the members that were killed on duty, and then they go to the cemetery on base and take a walk through and read some of the stories, you quickly realize that this organization is rich in history and traditions. While I was here and during my tenure, there were people from all over the world that came to visit. And one of the things that each and every one of them remarked was our overall ability as an organization to never lose sight of our history and our traditions, but a way that allowed us to tie it into current training with a focus on tomorrow. We don't train on horseback anymore. Why? It's not relevant in today's world. You don't police on horseback today in the way that we did during the March West. But that's not to say we should ever lose sight of the fact that the Northwest Mounted Police, or the Royal Northwest Mounted Police, if you look at the March West, if you look at those 300 men that started, they did that on horseback because it was relevant at that time. And Depot taught what was required to meet those needs and expectations. And as things evolved to when I joined, I didn't train on horseback. And you know, there are some members who will have said, oh, well, you know, the day the horses left, that's the end of the Mounted Police. I would disagree. They did what they had to do during their time frame to remain relevant as a policing organization in Canada. So today's training environment, today's training world is different in that regard. You go out, there's, you know, 2 kilometers of driver training track that wasn't there when I was here. There's state-of-the-art shooting ranges, state-of-the-art simulators. The version that we started with in the mid-90s was obviously version 1, and today we're at version 8 of the cadet training program. People from all over the world come here to try and figure out how it is that we do training to achieve the results we do. And I'm very, you know, confident in the level of instruction they get. I'm very confident in their abilities when they go out. Our recruiting process is solid with respect to, you know, the ones that come through training. And, you know, and I'll always hear people say as well things like, the generation today are a little different. Well, they said that about me. I said that about the cadets coming in. And it's been, you know, in that regard, it's true they're different. But you know what? They join the Mounted Police because they believe they can make a difference. They join the Mounted Police because they want to be a Mountie. And if you have that, and you add the 2 ingredients that I brought, good attitude, work ethic, and you stay within the confines of the core values, honesty, integrity, compassion, respect, accountability, and professionalism, how can you fail? You can't. And to think that next Friday when, you know, when I head east once again, you know, I tell cadets, you can't drive looking in the rearview mirror. You got to focus on the next move. You got to focus on the next job. But I'll tell you that when I drive out of Regina with Depot in the rearview mirror, it's going to be a rough day. It will be. But you focus on, I guess, the impact that you made during that period of time, and to be thankful, I guess, that I had the opportunity to spend almost 10 years of my career at a place that is just a cornerstone of the organization. It's a place where all Mounties go, and hopefully will continue to go for years to come. And it's just been an absolute phenomenal ride, and I'm thankful.